Okay. So yes, our root system as women is sourced from our heart. Our creational core is our heart. And when we're observing a flower and we're looking at its bloom and all its beauty, and we're missing out on the root system, we're missing out on all that nourishes that bloom, all that allows that flower to be what it is in the world for us. Its offering that it gives to us, its beauty, its awe, its inspiration that it provides for us. But it was first nurtured. It was first nourished from above. So today we'll be exploring the heart as the soil in which our identity is planted. So we have the codes of our identity that we can see as like a seed underneath of the soil, underneath of our heart, that grows roots deep down into our womb space. And then as we're receiving that love from above, the love of God, the love of those who cultivate us as flowers, we are soaking it all up in our hearts. It's going down into our sense of self and being and into our creational centers. And then back from that creational center, once we're rooted, we have a foundation, we're grounded. We get to take all of the nutrients from that space of the dark unknown, of our heart soil, the soil that surrounds us, and pull those nutrients up, that love, right back up through our identity channels and transform our sense of self into being of service to the world, of bringing that love back up into the world and seeing ourselves as devotional beings. And then our heart opens at the realization of that, at the love for others, at the love and our devotion for the inspiration that we get to provide. And just like imagining a seed and they're like shaking with excitement and bursting forth into a bloom. But oftentimes what we see is just the bloom. And so we miss out on all the beautiful, intricate, delicate threads that are running underneath of the surface. This wisdom that's been cultivated, that's been nourished by our heart. So we'll be talking here about how to source from the heart our routine, our rituals, our creation. This entire workshop series is about restoring creation to women, the codes of creation, the more mystical, the unknown, the deep down kind of like chasm and vortex and centers of our womb space, and how we can return to a rightful relationship with those spaces and places in our hearts and in our wombs. So I've welcomed you here, and we're going to start journeying in the body here. So I want you to just drop into your body as much as you can. Take a moment to soften your body. Feel your feet. Bring your presence and awareness, root yourself. Feel your legs. If you're sitting, you might imagine your legs as roots that are like grounding you, or roots coming out of whatever surface that you're sitting on or lying on your back. And just rooting into whatever surface that you're in. And I want you to bring awareness to all the ways that you live and breathe and bring to form the truth of love in your life. How you embody love, how you bring love to the surface as a bloom for people to see and be inspired by and look at and feel and touch. And bring awareness into all the ways that you live and bring to form the truth of your creational right as a woman. For some of us, that's been giving birth physically. For some of us, that's been our projects, cultivating the relationships with people that we love, our jobs, our gardens, and just bring into your heart the awareness of that wisdom that's been sourced deep within you. All the love that has been sourced from the depths of the unknown within you come up through your heart and has bloomed into the world. Oh, it's so beautiful. I invite you now to drop into your heart space and just feel what's living there right now. What's active at its surface, what's underneath of it, and see into your heart and visualize with me for a moment roots going down from your heart into your womb space in your creational center. And when you have that image, just see your heart as the soil of your being, the place that you get to receive from above, from God, from your thoughts, your mind, from life, from everyone around you, into the soil of your heart that houses your roots and that you get to enjoy the nutrients of. Notice how what you receive into your heart sets the tone for how you feel and how you identify yourself. If you see yourself as a seed underneath of the soil of your heart, how does what you receive inside of your heart affect how you see yourself? Just drop into that awareness. How grounded or ungrounded do you feel inside of your love right now? And underneath of your heart soil, I want you to visualize yourself as a seed, full of the essence of who you are, wrapped up with all the beauty and love you were ever created to express. Oh my God, you have so much creative potential wrapped up in your seed, underneath your heart, in your heart soil right now. The very essence and love codes of who you are is housed here. So just take a minute and feel your identity planted underneath of your heart soil, nourished by your heart. How do you feel nestled inside of the soil of your heart? Right now, depending on your heart conditions, is there room for you to expand? Is it warm? Is it cold? Do you desire more sustenance to thrive from your heart? Just take a moment to feel around to what's there inside of your heart and how you feel inside of whatever's there. And notice how you feel inside of your heart affects how rooted you feel and how safe you feel to take your root deeper into love. And imagine your heart slowly, just ever so slowly, opening deeper to love, soaking in from the surface of your heart all the love in your life, and just bring awareness to how nutrient dense and subtle and how just amazing that love feels, and how it softens the surface of your heart and touches you. And for a moment, bring your heart in awareness of someone or something that you love. Bring your presence to why you love them, why you love that thing, that person, what they provide for you, what they make you feel, and hold that feeling inside of your heart. And you might feel warmth or stillness or even a sense of calm. And imagine that love seeping down inside of you, just slowly inside of the soil of your heart and into the seed of your very essence of who you are. And let that love nourish your seed, the house of your identity, the seed that houses the sacred codes of who you are. And visualize with me that seed growing beautiful roots, growing down into the deep, dark, unknown of your womb space. And take note of how the energy of your womb feels. What's inside? Is it awake and moving with energy, soft and warm and alive with inevitable possibility? Or does it feel cold and barren at the moment and void of creative energy or the nutrients it needs to give life? And either is okay. But just see for a moment all the essence of that love dripping from your heart soil through your seed, your sense of self, into your creational space. And feel how that might make you feel grounded. Your womb more awake to the potential you have to house love in your creational centers. And rest in the beautiful awareness of that connection from your heart to your womb. Feel the love wash over and rain over your womb. Notice just how much possibility you hold in the depths of your being. Feel all that love warming your womb. Notice it soften and become wet with the fertility of life and love. Now visualize your roots and heart stabilizing you as you step back and look within to see yourself beautiful and strong, yet so very delicate, stabilizing your seed, your identity, all the way down. And this is how our heart stabilizes our creational chambers. And notice how all of this rooting has happened underneath of the surface. We have yet to even bloom, yet so much has gestated within the soul of our heart and our being. Our love essence, our seed, our center of self, and the depth of our womb. And yet we feel stable and supported by this love touching every corner of our inner being. Now see a plant with the deep roots below its surface that has yet to bloom. And maybe it doesn't even have leaves yet or any sort of buds that indicate that it's going to bloom. And just like in the soil that supports the root system of the flower, our roots carry that love, that nutrients from the dark of the unknown, just where our roots stop, back up into our creational centers. And we carry the love and nutrients of this unknown essence that we've sourced from deep below, up from our womb, back into our sense of self. And we see ourselves pulsing just below the surface of our heart, waiting to emerge. Our sense of self and identity being filled with possibility and expansion. Something inside of us waking up, waiting to break through the surface and share with the world above everything that we've sourced from below. All the love that we've soaked up, that's been poured into us, that we've soaked up from our roots. But just before we meet again, the heart portal threshold of the soil, the heart center, and what we have been carrying up from the depths of our heart, from our roots meets our heart. And we notice that what we were creating below is being filled with even more love as it meets our heart center. Except now we notice the love is being filled with what is for the world. Where before the love was nourishing what we were growing inside of us, establishing our root, this love is for the world. So see yourself full of this love, noticing the love you've rooted below as a foundation for you first, and then for you to carry up again through your system for the world to see. Then slowly, the code seed of your identity moves up through your heart, and now you've bloomed. This bloom is your creation. And the pollen that you're sharing with the world gives little traces of the unique codes of your essence to share with the entire world. And your love shows up in your beauty and your radiance and just everything that you emanate as this beautiful bloom. The Bible says you will know them by their fruits, not just by their essence, but how we actually show up in our actions in the world, how we bring spiritual truth into form, into the world. So obviously this workshop is called Restoring Ritual. So what in the world does all of this creational code, soil, plant stuff have to do with ritual? I'm glad you asked. Ritual is bringing the spiritual into form. We need to be able to see the truth of what we know in our minds in a way that is interact withable. We can see on the top side the essence of the seed through the bloom. We can touch it, we can see it, we can appreciate it. We can appreciate love when we receive a hug. We can receive love and really know love when we feel it in our bodies. It's one thing to know it here, to understand love, to understand God's love, to understand spiritual principles. All of that exists in the head space. But it's impossible to actually really know and interact with spiritual wisdom until it's brought into form. And that can be in our bodies, or that can be in other ways that we might explore or through our routines. But we have a problem because we have been experiencing a siphoning of our spiritual resources, our access to the spiritual. And we no longer are called to experience the spiritual in physical form. So, where ritual used to be a core part of our cultural identity as people, we are experiencing a sort of virtualization of our entire life right now. Everything is on the internet, and we listen to books, and we have all of these ways that we are not really interacting with the material world, the real world. And even religion has got this wrong, where we say deny the flesh, and your body is bad, and purity culture and all of these things. But it keeps us from experiencing spiritual truth beyond the mind. It's one thing to understand theology, right? It's another thing to experience the truth of spiritual law, to experience how it feels to be whiplashed by the magic of God working something out in a way you never, ever could have imagined. So, where we once had and interacted with art, we now have the replacement of cerebral art for profit, sterile buildings created for profit and functionality, but those do nothing to open the heart for us or the heart chambers of others. And we struggle to find the ethereal. We struggle to find love and consideration and care and all the spiritual truths that root us in our heart in embodied forms. We are told that beauty and now even love is something that we don't need. I don't need a man. I don't need relationships. I'm okay on my own. And all those things sound good, but they leave us unrooted. It's seen as a sort of excessive opulence. Love, beauty, it's like excessive, it's unimportant. And yet, the need for these awe-inspiring experiences, music, art, architecture, and figures that make us think of the spiritual are something that we crave. And we're deeply and desperately looking for that comfort. I talk in Draped in Devotion, just to detour for a second, about the codes of beauty. The codes of beauty are actually the codes of comfort. The comfort that beauty gives us. The comfort that there is hope for tomorrow. That someone sat and made something beautiful. That we can trust and rely on that things were beautiful that were made before. There are very ancient codes that are still running in flowers and trees and species. We can look at that beauty and feel comfort. We can look towards beauty and feel hope for the future, and that gives us peace. And as creational beings, as women, we house those codes of beauty, of creation. Those codes of comfort are things that women have been associated with since the dawn of time, okay? So to say that beauty is frivolous, it's silly, and excessive is to deny the truth of our need to root in a sense of safety. Beauty is safety. It arises from safety in nutrient-dense, unknown depths. When we feel safe, we're aroused, we're open, we're ready, we're available. And nature mirrors that, right? And so, as we gain further distance from the material world through the virtualization and cerebralization of all of the aspects of our lives, we risk losing the sensual, tangible ability to experience spirit in moving action in the world. And when you look at a painting, you might not see it moving, obviously, or when you hear music, but you feel something stirring underneath the surface in your heart. And it soaks, like this circuit that we just went through, it soaks into your sense of identity and it roots you. And those roots go deep down into a place that you can't quite describe. You know, I feel like when we feel something in our hearts, we can describe that we feel it in our hearts. But those roots that grows from our heart are sometimes something that we don't notice or we don't see because it's dark down there in our creational centers. And it takes time for all that to gestate. You know, we might not even see what was planted in our wombs until much later, much like pregnancy. So it takes time for it to come up to the surface. But when we experience art, when we experience beauty, we feel it move inside of our sensual body. And the heart womb circuit is a requirement for the feminine body to feel rooted and for our sense of beingness as women and as creational beings. But when we force our ascension into the higher planes of energy and the energy centers of the mind and stuff without first rooting in the heart, we experience womb rot. We are not rooted. We have no root system established first before we're trying to bloom. It's like planting a flower in air. It has no root system. Or like planting a flower, the seed, at the top layer of the soil before it's really had, you know, has a space to root itself, to expand. So we become critically ungrounded as women in our society. And the creational process must be restored to even begin relating to the spiritual realm with sincerity. So before we even start talking about ritual, we have to root in the heart, in our creational center. Pause. Just like truly soak that in. Because ritual is such a beautiful thing. And like the way that we get to create and be, yeah, just creative with how we craft our lives and infuse meaning with things from a place of love is so much fun and so beautiful. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. But it must take root in our heart and in the depths of our being. Otherwise, our understanding of the spiritual only exists at the level of the head. So when we enter the realm of the spiritual through ritual, we must first enter through the heart. In the Old Testament, we see the spiritual and ritual being hijacked and siphoned by the distortion of guilt and shame. In the old law, the rituals were based around fixing yourself, around making atonement for what was wrong with you and, you know, fixing it. And that worked for a time. But the new law is about creating a relationship with God, a relationship with love, God as love, and transforming our relationship and our way of being through our relationship to the heart. And Jesus just completely embodied this. And it would be not right for me to say that God literally gave us an example of bringing spirit to form through Jesus and showed us the new way of relating. Jesus said at the Last Supper, you know, this is my body. This is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. He didn't say, every day at 5 o'clock, you must do this thing. It is about when we remember it, when we choose to drop in and remember those things that spark a feeling of love in us, where Jesus loved us, or where we experience love when we're contemplating something. It's just these rituals, these items even that we infuse with meaning and intention are just opportunities for us to, when we remember, drop in and surround ourselves with things that move us inside, that bring spirit to form, whether that's in our clothing or our ritual that we might do with a red cup of coffee that symbolizes bringing love to form in your body, drinking in love, soaking it all in. You might imagine your roots being nourished with it, whatever it looks like for you. And we'll explore some ways that you can integrate ritual and symbolism into your life. But ritual is about just building a relationship with spiritual principles in a way that's interactable and understanding Him, God, and cultivating a true understanding of love instead of just being perfect. Because when ritual is too focused on perfection, it becomes corrupted. And it becomes, like I said, hijacked by these ideas of shame. I should have did this. I should have did it this way. Or, God's mad at me. Or I didn't do the dishes and I didn't clean all the way that it needs to be. So there's something wrong with me. So our routines, when they're not rooted in love, like we said, we lose a sort of groundedness, we lose a connection to love, and we get hijacked by shame. We get hijacked by the old law of guilt. And obviously we know, this is true of witchcraft or any magical new age ritual or manifestation techniques that focus on perfection and manipulative outcomes, very outcome driven ways of being, because it's not rooted in the heart. It's not rooted in an acceptance of what is. It's not rooted in real love. And so it doesn't really get to touch that like yummy, amazing depths of the unknown, experiencing the joy of like gestating and waiting in anticipation to bring something back up to the surface that is beautiful. It's trying to bring the bloom up right now, exactly how I want it. And again, you can see that leaves us unrooted. So the old law told us to make atonement for our sins and focus our intention on the rightness of it all. And even more, it was about making ourselves right through atonement and acts. And God saw that this would not do. So restored ritual allows for the reunification with love, intention, creativity, connection, and relationship with God, self, and others. And it allows for the continuous restoration and renewal of identity in us through our hearts. And so our routines, our intentions for ourselves and the world, and creation as a symbol, and the creation of symbol all pass through the heart with love for our own essence, right? We're appreciating that we get to create what we create. And then our love for what we get to create and the fact that we get to create and the fact that we're creative beings and our love for ourselves and everything that we are able to create gets to get rooted in our identity. This is who I am. This is who God has created me to be. These are my sacred codes. Nobody else runs this code. It's just mine. This is my DNA. And you get to root that in your womb. And then once we properly accessed and been nourished by love and gestated that love in our creational centers, we get to go back up through our womb, through our sense of self, and bring that love back out to the world. So our routines are run now by what we kind of analyze and theorize that we should do, but not necessarily what's good for our heart. So a lot of times we understand discipline is like, I have to do this or I'm bad. I have to do this thing. I have to attend this thing, or, I'm going to be seen as a bad person. I'm going to feel shame. I'm going to feel guilt. And so our entire understanding of discipline and of routine is totally disconnected from connection of God to God as a loving provisional source of nutrients for our heart. God wants to pour into our heart. The old law, yes, the old law. And this is how we are still living out the codes, the corrupted codes of the old law, where we believe that what we do and how we do it is about perfection and not about experiencing our hearts and growing those roots into our creational centers to bring them back to the world as an act of devotion. Because when we're not rooted in our hearts, there's nothing for us to bring up to the surface. We're just gestating shame and guilt, and there's no bloom coming. It's just dark and barren and cold in there, and it feels really horrible. So I want to practice some rooting and discipline that honors these gestational womb codes with you. So let's pretend we are washing the dishes. So we're going to enter the heart first. So with love for yourself and devotion for yourself, and you might need to close your eyes just to visualize yourself doing something like this. This looks like dropping into the body for a moment and just giving yourself compassion for the fact that this is something you've encountered challenges with. And say, I see you. I know this is really challenging right now, and it seems overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff to do. I see you. We don't have to do this at any set speed. There's no perfect way to get the dishes done. The tasks that I need to bring up to the surface, the things that I feel like need to bloom, will happen in its right timing. I love you so much, and just say your name. I love you, Leah. I love you, Heather. I love you, Katie. I love you, goodness. Say that to yourself. And then you may want to pause and find if there's any ways that you can supplement this task to make it more pleasurable and honoring of your feelings, of your heart, to see yourself. Maybe you want to feel at more ease instead of feeling overwhelmed. So go slow and promise yourself that you'll relax into the experience of doing this one thing, this one task, and not rushing, so that you can just have this time for yourself. You might use a soap that you love, or listen to a podcast you really like, or slow music or upbeat music with positive lyrics. That's something I love. You might pop a piece of chocolate into your mouth and promise yourself that you will savor it. But open your heart to yourself. And I just want to pause and say that this is something that you can apply to any situation in your life. If you're having a difficult time with a kid, it might be 5 seconds where you just say, I'm just going to give myself compassion right now. I'm going to root in this love and say, what can I do to supplement this experience for myself? Maybe it's some more deep breaths. Maybe it's saying that when I get done with this, I'm going to lie down and just breathe into my body, root for a moment. But I get to do this from a place of my heart instead of a place of there's a right way to do this, or there's a wrong way to do this, or if I do this wrong, I'm bad. There's something wrong with me, feeling guilt. Rooting in our routines, our daily routines from our heart space. So we've opened our heart and we've dropped this into we're going into our self gate, the place where our seed lies. And this is where we can root in affirmations. So when we're doing these things, we're going about our day, we can share with ourselves after we've connected with our hearts that you get to do these things for yourself. Who you get to be is a person that loves yourself, that gives care to yourself. And so you're not only loving yourself, but you're affirming that as your identity, as someone that gets to love yourself. And then you feel it and take that, and that roots all in your sense of identity. And then you get to birth whatever it is that you're having to do from your womb. You'll feel the contractions, the resistance, but let love, your heart, be the nourishment. Start with always root in your beginning intention. I see you. I love you. I get to be a person that sees and loves myself. And I'm with myself through all the labor, all the contractions, all the work that it will take for me to bring this up to the surface in the form of a bloom. And this is a huge initiation into creational wisdom that unfortunately, most people don't get to touch or experience because we're so gridded with the codes of shame from the masculine containers, even in our life. Our parents who told us, if you do this, you're bad, who maybe spanked us or told us that, you're a bad boy or you make mommy angry. And so we are recoding. In doing this, we are recoding our system with love. We are rooting in love. So after you're done with whatever it is that you're doing, you get to carry that love back up into your sense of identity and say, I'm a woman that honors myself. I now choose to honor myself in all of the world with the love I've rooted so deep now within myself by taking good care of me. The love that I've used to get this done, get whatever it is that I need to get done in my day, all the things that we encounter, the love that I use to nourish that, I get to take that same love back out into the world after I've been nourished. But I get to take that love back out into the world with me as a woman who's rooted, as a woman who's not been hijacked by shame or guilt, or this idea that I'm doing anything wrong or bad because I struggled in, in the gestating process of whatever it is that I'm trying to do or be, So we bring forth our blooms and we have deep, deep roots. And so that's wonderful. And that's, I think, where creation gets to exist within routine, because it gets to be creative. How we interact with our hearts and how we nourish our hearts gets to be a creative experience. But when it comes to ritual and symbol, I think that's a little bit more woo-woo. It seems a little bit out of reach. It's really actually quite simple. And I'm going to actually demonstrate because I feel like that makes sense. So this is a beautiful cup that I have. I have two of them. And I saw these and I thought to myself, you know, what does yellow or gold symbolize to me? And it could be prosperity, it could be friendship, it could be happiness. There's these beautiful flowers on here that I love. These could symbolize for you beauty. And all it takes to bring symbolism, because symbolism used to be a everyday part of people's lives, all it takes to bring back symbolism into your life is just looking around your space and encoding intentional meaning into the things that surround you. I have a pillow right now. It's a lumbar support pillow that says thankful and grateful. And I'm thankful and grateful for y'all being here. And, that's just the intention. That's the like beautiful creation that we get to play with life in that way. And craft, even if we wanted a ritual. So let's say we have these two cups and we have a friend that's coming over, and we want to just invite them into a fun creational space of a shared intention. This is so lost to us today. And say, I was thinking this cup to me symbolizes love. It symbolizes friendship, prosperity, beauty. And I want to pour a drink with you, water, whatever, and drink with you in shared agreement to this intention for our lives, for our love. You could do it alone. I have this little vase here that is lovely for baths. It's silver. That for me is just like a dash of luxury in my life. And I'll pour whatever soap is in there and maybe drop it into the bath. And when I'm in the bath, I'm bathing in it, out of love for myself. And I'm allowing that to take root in my identity. So when you're doing these rituals, when you're embedding these things with symbolism, you are recoding your identity to be a person that gets to soak in these truths, these spiritual truths about who you get to be and how you get to access, how you get to experience the world, how you get to experience love in all these different textures and tones and the fun ways of exploring God's love for you and the truth of all the things that he wants us to have and all the feelings and truths about who we are that we get to experience. And so again, we're exploring this as a way to bring truth into form. And so the spiritual really materializes. It doesn't have to be this like intense, like ritual, so many steps, because that again is falling back into the idea of perfection. Things have to be done a certain way. That's old law. But the spiritual materializes and is brought into form the very moment that we notice the sustenance gifted by God when we're looking at a leaf, the veins in the leaf, noticing how God has sustained this. We get to see in our hands and press it into our hands, really feel the texture of God sustaining life, touching it and feeling it. And all it takes is us feeling that in our hearts, soaking that into the soil of our hearts, our heart soil. And again, taking it all the way down to our identity and saying, like, what is the spiritual truth that I'm touching and feeling say about who I get to be, how I get to be, my identity that I get to root, what I get to house in my creational centers as a result of experiencing this. And again, bringing it up to the world for whatever it is that comes out of those unknown chambers, lower chambers. And so symbols and rituals weave truth into these like tangible threads that beckon to be witnessed, perceived, embraced through the senses. And this is the simple way that we bring the intangible into form. And so spiritual essence detached from earthly bindings, as some would say is the right way to do it, leaves us really devoid of the friction of the material world. When we experience anger or a person who might come to deliver a spiritual lesson about patience or something like that, we feel in our bodies a friction, like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. When we don't experience inside of us spiritual truth coming into form and we're not in recognition of it, we miss out on the refinement process that bringing the spiritual into form provides for us. So that friction in the material world shapes and refines us. And in the force field of the material world, where challenges sculpt the spirit and nurture our growth, the spiritual wants to be embodied. It wants to be recognized. And it really aches to merge with the solid essence of the material world. And unfortunately, untouched by the senses, the spiritual realm just dwells in the thought realm, where we might have a lot of words to explain spiritual truths, like I said before, but the experience of it remains distant. And so spiritual truth trapped within the prison of our mind's analysis is in fervent waiting to be embodied. And that is where you get anxiety, you're tossing and turning. The truth is clawing at the walls of our minds for escape. And the sort of ephemeral glimpses or short encounters that we get with truth, they kind of escape us because we remain in this sort of dissociative way of being where we're only being in our minds and we're not in our bodies. So we're dissociating from truth in those moments. And in our society, unfortunately, analysis maintains the illusion of reality and sanity, right? Yet it veers us away from the truth of existence, the truth of spiritual existence in the real world, God's active presence in the real world, in our lives, our creative ability as women, as people, really, but as women, as creational beings. And so, anything can become a symbol, anything can be a part of your ritual, anything can be a place where you can drop into your heart and recode your identity based on that love for yourself. And, this is really just what we deserve. It's really what we're here to do, to be active participants and responsible for our creational experience here. Otherwise, we get hijacked. We're not rooted. Like I said, it's like planting a seed in air. The wind blows and it goes wherever it wants, or wherever the force that moved it wants to. And so I'm just going to take a moment to reroute here. So a meditation that I find really helpful and beautiful inside of all of this is a shower meditation. And I love shower meditations. Katie's gone to the Central Emotional Intelligence class. And I think I might have only shared in the one-on-one, but either way, I love shower meditations. And the what actually came to me when I was in the shower was like being in the shower, imagining yourself as a little seed, just letting the rain of the shower pour into you and imagining it as love and imagining yourself like rooting in that love in your sense of identity in your heart first, and taking that love from your heart and rooting it in your sense of self, saying, I get to love myself. I get to experience love. I get to experience God's love. I get to feel it in my heart. And taking that and bringing it down into your womb. And it sounds like a weird, like, I don't know how to feel it. I don't know how to actually notice where I feel it in my womb. It's the dark unknown, if that's more helpful, because you don't actually know what bringing that wisdom into your sense of identity is going to bring up. It's just being planted. It's like the deep roots of it are just there. And when it's time for it to bloom, it will bloom when it's your right season. I mean, this is a perfect time for this workshop. We're coming into spring. And like when the flowers decide to bloom, when God says that it's time for them to bloom, they will bloom. And all the rooting that they've done in the meantime is like the dark unknown. They don't know. Only God knows when they will bloom. So, yes. So, the feminine absolutely lives and breathes the truth of symbolism, the idea of bringing the spiritual into form. We bring babies into the world. We bring the essence of love and comfort, like I said, into the world in physical form for people to see and witness and be in awe and like total inspiration of. But it's just really important for us to remember that we often believe we're creating life and meaning in our analysis. And it's something that women in particular can get hijacked by, that shame and just the programming of the world that says that if you analyze the heck out of something, you understand it and you're living in reality. And but we need to understand that we think that we're making meaning and we think we're creating life in our analysis, but we're actually just plugging into grids of secondary truth that others have planted inside of us that are not rooted in our hearts. And that meaning is found not in what's external, not in what others tell you, but in the truth your body, spirit, and womb delivers to you through love, through God, in your right time, in your root system. And this can only happen in the body. So I feel complete. I don't know what time it is, but I'm really curious if it's something that's available to you all now. Questions or anything that's come up for you around this, or feelings you might be having?
When you're talking about dropping into our heart and our body, I think about being a little girl again.
Mm.
I think I feel more, it just reminds me that I used to feel that way. And I feel like there's been so much, right and wrong,
Mhm.
guilt shaming of what I should be doing, with certain parts of my life. And as a child, really just taking, feelings and sensations and beauty and how I would reflect on it so differently and really allow it to process through my body, and in not a hurried way, like you're saying. And I just get glimpses of that from like my past, like, oh, like I did do that. I just have forgotten.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
actually amazing because when I think of babies, right, they're the closest to the spiritual realm. They just
Yes.
crossed the threshold, right? So they have not yet been like hijacked, like I said, with this shame and the the old way of being that's running through our society. It's still there, you know, and they know to feel in their heart when they know to experience God in their heart. They know to root it in their identity. Like, of course I get to feel love. Of course I get to love this thing. Of course I get to experience God's love in, playing with a puppy or my brother or sister or whatever. Of course. And they bring it up to the surface really quickly. They bloom really quickly. And
Hmm.
they're just beautiful flowering uh, examples, really, of how we can be when we return to our right form, our right creational codes. So I love that. Thank you so much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just really appreciate the whole like seed imagery, the root. Um, yeah, there's so much that happens in the unseen parts of us, um, and of life in general. There's so much, there's more that's unseen than what's seen, basically.
Yeah.
And I think we oftentimes forget about the existence of all that, you know, lies beneath this material we see.
Mhm.
And it may be still like a material substance form, but it's we don't see it. So I love that developing an awareness for those parts of us, both that are innately parts of us and then the things that have become parts of us, um, and allowing ourselves to become more aware to feel, even that which we cannot see. It's just,
Mm.
yeah, I feel like so much of my life was like growing up, so much other than faith in God.
Yeah.
So much was structured in the practical, in the material, in the, what was productive,
Mhm.
um, and like feelings, emotions, all this, even rituals, like if they weren't like assigned a label that is good and productive kind of thing, that there wasn't really space for it.
Mhm.
And just like you talked about those roots, like there's these different threads and they're woven together in different ways and they're reaching out and they got nutrients from like different places. There's this whole intricate network, um just to honor the fact that we have experiences, we have things that nourish us, that just like those trees outside, like they're some of their nourishment is like other stuff that rotted.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like that, uh, the way that I just to honor all that is as useful for, you know, nourishing the seed and growing. Oh, I loved the pollen thing too. That was the thing that at the time when you said that, I was like, I want to share that. That was really cool because, um, you know, pollen is, yeah, it's visible, but it's so small that it's often overlooked, except
Mhm.
if you're an allergy sufferer, right? Um, but yeah, just the way you share like that, there it's got like its own little fingerprint that is unique to that which it came from, that like helps perpetuate itself in the world, or the like to be like the parent plant, but like I think that's beautiful that we have this life inside us,
Yeah.
that's unique.
Yeah.
And though, some people might put people in categories and, oh, they're like that or whatever, like even those 16 personalities, like, no, we are each unique. We have a unique gifting, contribution, and that all that comes from us, even prior to the fruit, because like you said, the pollen, that's before fruit. That's in the flower season. Still, it carries this unique essence that, or, you know, DNA, there's not another one exactly like that. And yeah, that I think that when we don't really know who we are, sometimes, especially depending how we're raised, we might say, oh, I'm not much. Like my contribution's not that unique. Anybody can do this, or maybe not anybody, but there's like a whole bunch of other people who could contribute, like the kind of thing I'm contributing. But yeah, that was just a little reminder that no, there's no one else exactly like you. And that when we bring something, when we bear flowers or fruit in the world, you know, metaphorically, um, it's something that no one else can bring in the exact way we can, or in the exact space in which we can bring it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all of that. Like so many things came up for me and you're sharing. Um just like one of them in particular was just how like when we're flowering, we haven't even really brought our fruits to the world. But like decay is also something that nourishes us. Like we can receive sustenance and provision from so many different sources and places in our life. And when we're rooted in love and understanding to love it all, to be with it all, it gets to be sustenance for us because we get to root in that love. And again, it's like this beautiful, like in my mind, well, when God dropped this into my system, I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like this circuitry of like the heart gate opening and then rooting that love into your sense of who you are and who you get to be, and then gestating and bringing that up. But even when you bring something up, sometimes parts of who you believe yourself to be after you bloom die. They fall off. I mean, they always do. There's a cyclical nature to our identity. You have the same codes forever, but you express yourself in different ways. And that's how it's supposed to be. And that gets to be nourishment too. That like death and rebirth process. And it looks sometimes when you're not blooming like something happening. I don't know who I am. Or like, all those affirmations that we put in ourselves about this is who I get to be. It's like, I don't know what's coming of that. It's just like in the dark deep. No, like what's gonna bloom in spring. But part of our like feminine experience is being in trust and being in yes, every rose fades and all the petals. Yeah. Yeah, all the petals drop. And it's part of the beautiful cycle of life. And even more so the way that we get to experience ourselves in cycles of just death and rebirth, but knowing that at our core, our codes remain the same. Um, yes, so I just want to just appreciate you all for being here, yes, but also for just investing in your heart and the world through being present to these things that I think are, like I said, often seen as nice to have, so like don't really need it. Like, um, because this is needed. Like, it's really needed for us to carry this out into the world. Like, if we imagine like the winds and people that encounter us and all the different things that might happen, but people encountering our unique essence, having been changed by our awareness of our access to love as a root, is so powerful for the world. And I'm just so excited about like this whole series. But yeah, thank you guys so much. You ladies just really were a pleasure and such a blessing to my heart.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you, Catherine, for being here. I'm looking forward to the rest of this week and sharing and learning, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. This is a great start to learning more about it. And it's so many things that I know here, but I don't know here.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes.
I
So
wanted to say, Heather, you have a beautiful smile.
yes,
You
definitely.
just, you just like, there's a kind of life that just like oozes and radiates from your face. So
Oh, thank
I
you,
want to share that.
Catherine.
But yeah, Leah, I put a little, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but I just said thank you, Leah. You sharing
Oh,
your pollen, your blooms, and lovely fruit is a marvelous gift to the world and
oh,
to us, to me.
thank you. Thank you. Well, obviously, I invite you all to really meditate on this and just like get creative about where you can be more intentional about infusing meaning into things that's rooted in love and surrounding yourself with the truth of the spiritual in your life, in your real life. So yeah, thank you guys so much. And I
Thank you.
bless you all. And I send you all away to bloom and blossom into the world, rooted in love. Yes, absolutely. Have a great evening. Bye.